Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel, and today we go tiny. Super tiny. In fact, we don't go micro, we go nano with the HTB Nanobots with some custom paint apps. Admittedly, Megatron and Prowl, the two most challenging and probably the two least successful. Nevertheless, we're going to look at them and a few more in the latest GotBot True review. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I am your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, man, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe, and while you are at it, light them up, baby. Hit that notification bell, please, as it helps me out a ton, and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, the Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links, all of that in the description down below. Also in the description down below, and if you are in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course, you can hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. And this is a couple of examples of the HTB Toys Nanobots. Half the Battle Toys have done a really splendid job here. Very well articulated. I did shorts for Megatron, one member of Reflector, and Soundwave, along with Ravage and Laserbeak. And on the Autobot side, I did Optimus, Bumblebee, and Prowl. Since then, I've added some paint apps. Now, when I say nano, and I say smaller than micro, we're talking half the size, roughly, of a Micromaster. Like, they kind of come up to a Micromaster's waist. In fact, some of them are even smaller than that and only come up to a Micromaster's knee. To be fair, these two, for the paint apps that I added, are the roughest. To the naked eye, and with the size that these little guys are, honestly, it works fine. Trying to do things like eyes and eyeballs, brutal, brutal. These are also prototypes. So the molding was probably not perfected at this point, which means when we look at this, take note, yes, you can add paint apps. Yes, I'm aware that mine aren't perfect. Yes, they were also, on top of everything, a bit rushed because I wanted to get this review to you guys. Yes, I should have used some sort of a magnifying glass. But I talk about that more in there. But before we ever get started, before anybody says anything, yes, the eyes of Megatron are really, really rough. To the naked eye here, it's fine. It looks like black around it with the red in there, but when you see it up close, it's awful. Prowl needed the most paint, and because of an issue that I had, that luckily I was able to fix, I kind of had to give up on doing some of the work on him, which is why he's a little bit rough around the edges, especially in the torso. So, just so you're aware that I'm aware. So without any further ado, how about we head over to the table and take a closer look at the Nanobots. And yes, indeed, one and all, we're taking a look, finally, at my painted up, or at least semi-painted up, prototype models of the Half the Battle Toys HTB Toys versions of the Nanobots. And these are prototypes. So a couple of caveats I got to give here before we get into this. One, some of the paint specifically on Prowl and the eyes of Megatron are particularly rough. Truth be told, I probably should have had some sort of a magnifying glass to help me along with it, because these are tiny. I may go back and touch it up and redo it somewhat. Also, these are prototypes. The like official, like mass-produced model kits are, as far as I know right now, as of this recording, available for pre-order on TF Source. So mine might be a little bit rougher than the finished product that you're going to be able to get. We'll talk about that as we go through. In terms of doing some paint apps, I mean, you're definitely going to want to paint these little guys up. I'm pretty sure that most people would want to do that. For me, it was a mix of like a bristle from a toothbrush and toothpicks and like my smallest brush. These are tiny. There's a reason they're called Nanobots. Here they are, and you'll notice too that these scale. Like here I have Prowl, Bumblebee, Optimus, Megatron, one member of Reflector, and Soundwave with Laserbeak and Ravage. And you'll notice that they are indeed different heights. Like Optimus is bigger than Prowl. Prowl is bigger than Bumblebee. Megatron is bigger than Reflector. I think he's slightly bigger than Soundwave. And of course Soundwave's cassette bots, though they don't transform into cassettes, obviously, they are smaller once again. How tiny though are these guys? Well, here they are next to Holly, that comes with, or Holy, depending on how you pronounce it, that comes with the Victory Saber, the HasLab Victory Saber set. So these are about half the size of a Micromaster. They're a little bit bigger than, say, the Brain of Courage, which is about half the size of a Titan Master. So, you know, we're looking at, I'd say we're looking at full Titan Master size here. Maybe Titan Master size. So yeah, they're tiny, right? We're going to look at each of these very quickly, up close. I previously did, before I'd done any of the paint work, I previously did a few shorts on these guys where I very quickly looked at them. We'll also see kind of how I think these work best. If you watched A Very Transformers Christmas, you also kind of saw a couple of scenes with Megatron and Optimus outside of the Ark. So you can see kind of how they would scale, kind of, sorta, with the Ark. But like I said, we're going to go through them. Again, the paint is somewhat rough because where these were prototypes, the mold was, you know, a little bit rough in certain places. And of course, I really probably should have had a magnifying glass. I didn't. Transformation, I can tell you now, is a 0 because they don't transform. The articulation 10, for what they are, for as small as they are, the articulation is mind-bogglingly good. And the look, well, I mean, they're a base color, really. I think that they're basically a gray color. They might eventually come up in full color prints. We'll have to see, right? That's something that they're working on, that HTB's working on. So, in terms of the color, it depends on how much work you're willing to put into it, right? You know, how close to that animation or toy accuracy is it that you want, and is it that you can pull off? So, we're going to look at the Decepticons first and start with the roughest of them all, that being good old Megatron. And, you know, like, I don't hate this. Again, the eyes, I know they're messed up. However, to the naked eye, not blown up as big as this, to the naked eye, you really don't notice it. All you really see is the black around the eye, and you manage to see the red pupil. The red pupil's such a small detail that it was put in with a bristle from a toothbrush. That's how small it is that we're talking about. Could I have done better? Maybe if I had magnified it, like I said. The red on the elbows I added, the button detailing I added, but as this guy goes, he was mostly a gray print. For me, I actually had a different gray on the legs and the black on the pelvis, and the fusion cannon was already black. Here's where the joy comes in with these guys, though. I mean, you don't even have to do the paint if you don't want to. The articulation. So this guy here has a head that goes left and right and kind of up and down. The arms are on ball joints and go all the way around, out to the side, elbow to 90 degrees. The wrist can swivel as well. The waist, the guy has a waist that could go all the way around. The legs can go forward. The legs can go back, and if you wanted to push it more, you could get more. I mean, out to the side, again, if you wanted to push it more, you could get more. There's ankle tilt as well, and knee to 90 degrees. I mean, for something that's half the size of a Micromaster, honestly, what more could you really possibly want? The paint, like I said, a little bit rough, but otherwise I think Megatron is splendid. Mine being a test print, my knees were a little bit loose, so I had to actually thicken them up a bit. But again, that's not mass production, that's just a prototype. Yeah, really fantastic, but he's not the only Decepticon, of course, that I got, because I also have one of the 3 members of Reflector. Again, I had to paint the face silver and the eyes red. I done the silver around his chest and the green inside. Luckily for me, the rest of this was printed in purple and gray. But I mean, I would have done it if I had to. Again, in terms of the articulation, the head goes left and right. The arms can go all around. This one, or I guess I should kind of show it. The arms again go all the way around and out to the side. The elbow to 90 degrees. And yes, because it's a ball joint, you also get technically a bicep swivel. He's holding a blaster, but I think you can get versions in hands that don't have blasters. Like you can just pop the hands out. Does this guy have a wrist swivel? I think he does. Waist, he has. I just knocked off one of his toes, but that's me. And you can see the little ball joint there for his toe piece, right? I'll have to put that on after. That was my fault. I knocked that off. But the legs forward, the legs back, the by right's toe tilt, right? You can see it there, even though I knocked it off of the other one. I'll put that back on in a moment. And of course, you can do the splits all the way out to the side. If something does knock off, which I doubt it will on the finished product, it's very simple. You just pop it back on over the ball joint. But yeah, Reflector. And there's one more Decepticon. That is Soundwave and his minions. Okay, so Soundwave and his minions were a fair amount of work as well. With Laserbeak first. Let's see if I can hold Laserbeak and kind of make it visible for you. So I did the silver on the two blasters that are on his back. I done the red on the wings. I even, you're not gonna be able to see it, but I even did gold on his actual beak. Again, he doesn't transform, but what a great wingspan and stuff. This was, again, printed in a smoky gray, almost a black. So taking him out of it. Then we have Ravage, and Ravage was again done in that like smoky gray, almost black. I mean, you could have painted him black. I left them. I did silver on all four of his legs and on his hip rockets. I mean, the guy even has his hip rockets. Now, to be fair, neither Ravage nor Laserbeak have any articulation. They're just static, solid pieces. Then we get to Soundwave, who was also a ton of work. I used a metallic blue on his chest, gold all the way around. I used red on his visor and around his wrist and around his shoulder-mounted sonic cannon thing. And I did silver on his knees as well. His body was mostly printed in blue with this other almost whitey gray, but his head was just in the gray. So I had to paint the entire head blue, then I had to paint the visor a gray color, and then the mouth plate a gray color, and then I had to paint the visor a red color. Very, very, very tiny that we're dealing with here. So again, I did the best I could, and maybe I could have done better, but I wanted to get this out to you guys now, in case you want to, you know, get your pre-orders and stuff in yourself, right? So, for Soundwave, the head goes left and right. Not really any up and down. The arm, again, on a ball joint, can go all the way around, out to the side. We have elbow to 90 degrees. Because the elbow's on a ball joint, again, it gives you a bicep swivel. We do, again, have the wrist swivel, like we did with the others. We have a waist, again, very free-flowing. Legs all the way forward. Legs back again. Knee to 90 degrees. We have toe tilt again. And again, out to the side. I mean, for something this small, I can't possibly see that you would need him to do the splits more than this. But for the Decepticons, what a really tremendous start. Now, I know that some Seekers exist. I don't have those, unfortunately, though I'd really like to have them. I can tell you that while the main trio of Seekers exists, the molds are slightly different, which means all three Seekers are slightly different. Not enough that you're really going to notice too much, but you might look at one and say, his body seems a little wider, or he seems a little more slender. Very minor, but enough to make them unique, and I think that that really shows kind of love for what you're doing. I'd love to get those, and I'd love to get the other two members of Reflector, to be honest with you. So hopefully, one day, that will be something that I'll be able to do. Now, for the Autobot side of things, we begin with Prowl, who was easily the hardest of all of these guys to do. So, the articulation is exactly the same. I'm not going to go through it again. He has the head that moves. He has the arms that can go all the way around. He has the elbow, which is also a bicep swivel, the wrist rotation, the waist, the legs out to the side, forward and back. the knee to 90 degrees, and the toe tilt. He has everything. If you wanted to get the arm in such a position and you felt like the door wings were in the way, the whole backpack piece can come off. It's a rectangular or square peg on the back and a peg hole in the wing piece, so you can actually take the door wings off. The door wings were completely cast in white. I had to add the black and the red door handles. The head was done in white. I had to paint the gray face, add the blue eyes, and do his red head crest. The main torso was all gray, so I had to paint it white and add the black. You will notice that the black on the chest is slightly off center. I also had to do the gray around the bumper with the two little red highlights. Here's the thing with this guy. I made a mistake and got a little ham-fisted with him and broke a ball joint on the shoulder. I was very sad about that. However, luckily, I was able to glue it back on, and it has held just fine since. And yes, I've manipulated the arm a lot. I've held him up. I've shook him by the arm. It is solid. So if you ended up having a problem like that, you can glue it back on and it will be just fine. The material used takes glue really well. Again, that said, this is a prototype, so it was going to be a little bit weaker. This is not the final mass production version, so you should be just fine, whereas I wasn't really. I also added the silver on the thighs here. I added the black on the waist and the red in the center of that. So there was a lot done with this guy. I do have alternate hands. You'll notice he's holding his blaster, but he doesn't need to be holding his blaster. I can actually change his hand out. Not only does he have wrist rotation, but you can take his hand out and put a different one in. I like that feature. Honestly, you can sort of mix and match these guys a bit because it's all kind of ball joints really, right? Ball joints and pegs, and they're toleranced very well for the most part. I gotta say, a little bit of looseness with the knees of my Megatron, but that's about it. Then we get to, next to the cassette bots, the smallest of the versions I have, which is itty bitty Bumblebee. And if you're wondering just how big Bumblebee is, here's my finger, and I do not have big hands, and he's literally no bigger. Just fell over. He's literally no bigger than like the very top part of my finger, like tiny. Doing the windows around his chest was brutal. Doing the white on his face and then the blue eyes, brutal. The black fist, that was easy. I've seen it done too. Actually, I think HTB did it themselves, where there's also been white on the toe bumpers, we'll call it, and maybe a couple of more details. This was done in both yellow and black, so I didn't have to paint the yellow, but I would have if I had to. Because this guy is smaller, a couple of things that you should note with him. He does not have a waist, or if he does, my copy does not. And I think that's it. I'm not sure if he has toe tilt. Does he? Let me see. He might not have toe tilt, and he doesn't have the waist, but he has everything else. So, again, I mean, he's half the size of Optimus. Optimus is, say, half the size of a Micromaster. So we're talking very, very, very tiny here. I mean, if I compare my finger next to Holly that I had earlier, Bumblebee would come up to about Holly's knee. Right? Like, here's Holly again. You're not going to see all of them, but like Bumblebee only comes up to his knee, right? Itty bitty. So doing the paint is a bit of a Herculean task, but it's totally worth it. The nice thing is, because everything has molded in detail, as long as you can see it, as long as you can get a bristle or a very pointy toothpick or something that can get in around the molded detail, you should be okay. My problem with Megatron was that I didn't have an abundance of molded detail that I could pick out on his face in the very kind of light, almost white that he was printed in. And that finally brings us to Optimus Prime himself. Now, I didn't paint his fusion or his ion blaster black, though I could. His ion blaster and the hand that's in there is all cast in gray. Again, I didn't bother to paint the hand that's holding it either. You could change it out if you wanted to. I didn't need to paint the blue or any of the red on this guy, luckily. I did, however, paint his faceplate silver. I didn't paint in the eyes on him. I was like, you know what, that's just too small for me to get at. I've done the chest, I've done the yellow on his pelvis, I've done the silver on his smokestacks. And like, I love this. He is probably the best representation that I have of what like mass-produced quality will be like. So I will go through the articulation with this guy. The head goes left and right, the arm all the way out to the side, elbow to 90 degrees, bicep swivel, wrist rotation. Arm, by the way, can again go all the way around, and like the tolerance is so good on this guy. The waist again is there. Oh, I also did the gray line on the center of his body there. The legs go forward, the legs go back. Again, they can go all the way out to the side, like all the way out to the side, right? Knee to 90 degrees, again. Knee to 90 degrees. The toe tilt is there. It's all there. All there, and he stands like an absolute champion. I love these guys, and I especially love them for this reason. Because they scale perfectly with Titans. Up here next to Fort Max's head we have itty bitty Optimus Prime, Prowl right here on this knee, Bumblebee over there on that knee. You can see down front Soundwave here. Laserbeak is, I don't know, he's pecking at Fort Max's foot, I guess. Ravage over there taking a little bite at a Fort Max's toe. You can see Reflector down there, and right front and center is Megatron, and they are very nano next to a Titan. They scale nicely with combiners, they scale nicely with Titans. If you have a Unicron, whether it's Studio Cell or whether it's the HasLab Unicron, they would scale beautifully with that. I mean, can you imagine dropping this fully articulated Megatron into the maw of Unicron? Come on, good night nurse. The Nanobots from HTB Toys, I got to say, I have a bunch of them now, and even though they're prototypes, man, am I ever impressed. And here we are once again, and here they are. So on the Autobot side of things, I think the Bumblebee is pretty stupendous, tiny. Granted, he has to give up a little bit of the articulation, but I don't think you're going to miss it for the size that he is. It's amazing that he has the articulation that he has. Then we have Prowl, who I think has pretty great articulation. It's a shame that I busted one of the shoulder ball joints. I was able to fix it, but after I did that, I said, you know what? Luckily it works. Luckily it's solid. I can move the arm all around. It's fine, but I don't think I want to go back and kind of chance breaking something else. I don't think that this will happen with the actual production samples before anybody worries about that. Remember, mine were prototypes, so there were going to be some imperfections on them anyway. Optimus Prime, of all of these guys, my copy of Optimus Prime is toleranced the best. He is the absolute best. He is a measure of perfection of what these can be. On the Decepticon side, I love Megatron from the neck down, probably even from the nose down. Yes, I mucked up the eyes. Yes, I should have used a magnifying glass, but like here now, you can see how tiny they are with me holding them. To the naked eye, they're fine. I think Reflector is my favorite of the Decepticons. He seems to not only be toleranced the best, but have the best range of motion. Soundwave was great. Having to paint his head was a pain. Was the bane of my existence. I actually had to take the head off because of the shoulder thingy, right? And then paint it and then put it back on. So it was a bit rough. I think Laserbeak is adorable and I think it works well. I think Ravage, same thing. Granted, they can't move, but I don't think they really need to. There are more Nanobots than the ones I have shown here. I mentioned the Seekers. I know that there's Prowl. I know that there's Huffer. I know that there's going to be a Trailbreaker, and so on and so forth. Will you have to add paint? Yeah, probably. Will they ever be done with full color prints? Who knows at this point. But you can keep up on everything to do with it, with the pre-orders and whatnot, from HTB Toys and from TF Source. That's kind of I think where they're being offered through, if I'm not mistaken. I love the guys. I think they work tremendously well with Titans. Maybe they could work with combiners depending on your stance. Let me know what you think of HTB's outing here with these little Nanobots. I think it is brilliant and unique. Something we haven't really seen done in the market before at this size with this articulation. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link, check us out on Patreon, see what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course, hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, stick around, man, have some fun with us here on the channel, and especially don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single solitary day, you right there, you do make a difference in the world. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres, or the old fashioned way, right here inside the videos.